The day it happened started like any other Tuesday, gray and overcast outside, a perfect match for the mood in our house. Jacob had been home for about an hour, locked away in his room. I was in the kitchen, trying to decide on dinner, when I heard him yelling. Not at anyone, just at his computer. It was a raw, guttural sound of pure frustration. I took a deep breath. My first instinct was to ignore it. Don't poke the bear. But it was getting louder, more violent. I walked to the living room doorway, my heart starting to pound. "Jacob," I called out. "Everything okay in there?" He stormed out of his room, his face flushed and his eyes wild. "It's not fine. Nothing is fine." I tried to keep my voice calm. "Okay, let's talk about it. What's wrong?" "You wouldn't get it," he spat, and the venom in his voice just stole my breath. The trigger was so small, it's almost absurd. I asked him to turn the game off so we could get ready for dinner. That's all it was, a simple request. But for him, in that moment, it was the last straw. "No," he screamed. The word was an explosion. He wasn't just talking to me, he was roaring at the world. He turned and in one violent motion swept a lamp off an end table. It flew across the room and smashed against the wall. That was the first sound. I froze. This was different. This wasn't a slammed door. This was destruction. Before I could even process it, he grabbed a stack of books off the coffee table and hurled them to the floor. Then he turned to the bookshelf and just started pulling things off. A framed family photo, the one of us on vacation, all of us smiling, hit the floor, and the sound of the glass shattering echoed the shattering inside my chest. He kicked the leg of a chair until it splintered. He ripped a cushion from the sofa. I was standing maybe 10 feet away, and I was terrified. It wasn't just fear of the damage. It was a primal fear for my own safety. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike. But his face was a mask of pure fury. There was no recognition in his eyes. It was like he was looking right through me. In that moment, he was a stranger, and I was a hostage in my own home. The heart of our home was in ruins, and all I could do was watch it burn. The rampage ended as suddenly as it began. He just stood there in the middle of the wreckage, chest heaving, panting. He looked at the chaos around him, then he looked at me. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Maybe fear? Then the mask was back. Without a word, he turned, walked back to his room, and shut the door. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Then just silence. Heavy and suffocating. I stood there, rooted to the spot, just taking in the scene. The shattered glass from the picture frame glittered on the carpet. A jagged hole scarred the drywall where the lamp had hit. Our living room, the place where we'd celebrated birthdays and opened Christmas presents, looked like a war zone. But the physical damage was secondary. What really lay in ruins was my idea of my family, of my son, of myself. The shock was a cold wave that left me trembling. This wasn't teenage angst. This was a crisis. The feeling that my home was a safe place was gone. It had been stolen not by an intruder, but by my own child. An avalanche of questions buried me. How did we get here? What did I do wrong? Was this my fault? The guilt was a suffocating weight. I felt like a complete failure as a parent. I had watched my son turn into someone I didn't know, and I had done nothing to stop it. The isolation was immediate and absolute. Who could I tell this to? Who would understand? Admitting it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready. In the deafening quiet of my wrecked home, I had never felt more alone. A line had been crossed, and I knew with a terrifying certainty that nothing would ever be the same. For the next few hours, I just sat on the stairs staring at the mess. I didn't clean it up. I couldn't. It felt important to see it, to not pretend it didn't happen. Jacob's door stayed closed. When my husband came home to that scene, the horror on his face mirrored what was in my heart. That night, we didn't talk about blame. We just held each other and cried, whispering the question that had been screaming in my mind. What do we do now? For days, a fragile, terrifying truce held in the house. We tiptoed around each other. The living room was slowly put back together, but the emotional wreckage was still there. I realized a devastating truth in those dance days. Love was not enough. My love for Jacob was as deep as the ocean, but it couldn't fix this. This was bigger than my love. It was bigger than our family. Taking that first step was the hardest thing I've ever done. It felt like a betrayal, like admitting I had failed. But I knew that doing nothing was the one thing we couldn't afford. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop and typed words I never thought I would. Help for parents of violent teens. The screen filled with resources, articles, and forums for parents of teens with behavioral and mental health issues. Reading the stories from other parents was both heartbreaking and a huge relief. We weren't alone. This terrible secret shame we were carrying was something other families had faced too. Seeing our struggle in their words gave me the courage to make a call. I found the number for a local family crisis center. I remember sitting in my car, unable to make the call from inside the house. My voice shook as I tried to explain what happened, choking back tears. But the person on the other end didn't judge me. She just listened. And then she said the words that started us on our path to healing. Thank you for calling. It takes so much courage to ask for help. We can start by finding a therapist who specializes in this. That one phone call didn't solve everything, but it pierced the darkness. It was the first step on a long, hard, and uncertain road, a road toward intervention, understanding, and hopefully back to our son. If you're reading this and any of it sounds familiar, if you're living in a house where you feel like you're walking on eggshells, I need you to hear me. You are not alone in this, and it is not your fault. The shame and isolation you're feeling are real, but they don't have to be your whole story. The bravest thing you can do is say the words out loud. We need help. If you feel comfortable, sharing a piece of your own story in the comments can be a powerful reminder for you and for others that this is a shared struggle. Let this be a space where we can find support, not judgment. Our journey is far from over. We still have good days and incredibly hard days. There's therapy for Jacob and for us. There are new ways of talking to each other and new boundaries we're learning to build and enforce. We're rebuilding the trust that was shattered that day, piece by tiny, fragile piece. It's slow, painstaking work. I don't know if the light in my son's eyes will ever be as carefree as it was in that birthday photo. He's been through a battle, and battles leave scars. But I no longer see a stranger when I look at him. I see my son again, a son who was struggling, a son who was fighting his own demons, but my son nonetheless. That day, he crossed a line that changed everything, but it also forced us onto a path toward confronting a painful truth, toward getting real help, and ultimately a path that may, with a lot of work, lead our family to a new, more honest place.
And through it all, one thing has never wavered: my love for him. And I will never, ever give up on him. The first thing that broke the silence was the sound of shattering glass. The second was realizing I was looking at my son, but I didn't recognize the person staring back. Our living room was destroyed, but that was nothing compared to what his actions did to our family that day. That was the day my sweet boy, the child I've raised, vanished right before my eyes, replaced by a stranger filled with the rage I just couldn't comprehend. That afternoon, our sense of safety as a family was shattered, and the aftershocks of that moment changed our lives forever. It's funny, the things you hold on to. I have this one picture on my nightstand from his 8th birthday. He's got a smudge of chocolate cake on his cheek, and he's missing his 2 front teeth, grinning this huge, gummy smile. His eyes, they were so bright, so full of light. That was my boy. That was Jacob. For most of his life, that's who he was. He was the kid who'd cry if he accidentally stepped on a snail in the garden. He built these elaborate Lego cities all over the floor and gave every single tiny figure a name and a backstory. He was sensitive, maybe a little too much so. He just felt things so deeply. When he was happy, the whole house felt his joy. When he was sad, it was like a quiet rain settled over all of us. We were just a normal family. We had movie nights on Fridays, took summer road trips, and argued about whose turn it was to do the dishes. I have boxes of photo albums filled with those moments. Jacob in his first school play, a sheep with droopy ears. Jacob holding his little sister, looking at her with a mix of awe and terror. Jacob, year after year, growing taller, his smile changing, but his eyes always staying the same. Bright. Kind. I look back at those photos all the time and I ask myself, where was the warning? Where was the sign this storm was gathering? Because when I look at that boy with the chocolate on his face, I can't see a single trace of the person who would one day stand in our living room and bring our world crashing down. I thought I knew my son. I thought I knew his heart. But that day taught me that sometimes the people we love the most can become strangers in our own homes. The change wasn't a sudden storm. It was more like a slow, creeping fog. It started around the time he turned 14. At first, it was easy to just brush it off. He got more withdrawn, spending hours in his room with the door shut. That easy laughter that used to fill the house was replaced by one-word answers and the constant thump of music through his wall. It's just teenage angst, we tell ourselves. All kids go through this. His grades, which were once a source of pride, started to slip. His teachers said he seemed distracted, disengaged. When I tried to talk to him about it, he just shrugged. School's boring, he'd mutter, his eyes glued to his phone. The light in his eyes started to dim, replaced by a kind of tired frustration. Then the anger started showing up in flashes. They were small at first. A slammed door when he was told to do a chore, a video game controller thrown against the couch. They were outbursts, yeah, but they were over in an instant. Afterwards, he'd often seem ashamed and retreat back into his room. I kept telling myself that teenagers have big emotions and haven't learned how to manage them yet. I tried to talk to him to get what was going on, but it was like talking to a locked door. Looking back, I can see those moments for what they were: tremors before the earthquake. Each one was a small crack in our family's foundation, but we kept plastering over them, just hoping they'd go away. We were so desperate to believe everything was fine, that our sweet boy was just navigating the tough parts of growing up. We were scared to admit that something deeper, something more unsettling might be happening. That fear kept us from seeing the truth that was right in front of us. The fog was getting thicker and we were all getting lost in it.